Good morning, Tampa Bay. What is going on? Happy Tuesday, November 15th, Channelside in the morning, live on the Channelside Sports Network. Well, week 10 is officially over. The Buccaneers are on a bye. They're back to 500. And they're showing vast improvements on both sides of the ball. And I can't help but wonder if part of the reason why they're showing such a vast improvement is because of Akeem Hicks being back on the defensive line. You know, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. You guys in the chat chimed in as well. Akeem Hicks being back helps Vita Vea. It opens him up as well, right? Because if you're just having to double team Vita Vea, you know, Nacho's going to get some, but he's as good as Nacho is, he's not on that Vita Vea level, right? He's not on that over the top superstar level like Vita Vea is. Sure, some of it has to do with the personality that Vea possesses, but a lot of it has to do with the performance on the field as well. You know, we do live in a world where your personality does have an effect on how people perceive you and how people, you know, rank you and rate you essentially to call you a good player or not a good player. So we're going to talk about some Buccaneers news. I'm going to kind of dissect the numbers as well. We're bottom of the hour, and we'll probably transition over. We'll talk about the ugly loss for the Orlando Magic last night to the Charlotte Hornets. Was not pretty. Game was close-ish. You know, 105, 112. The game was close, but I mean, it was when we look at the metrics and we start looking at some of the numbers, then you understand and you see, okay, so yeah, this is where this team is kind of, you know, this is where they fell apart. You know, and I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, we can't lose to the Hornets." Like, I mean, well, you know, we didn't have our superstar, and they got their superstar back, and that does play a factor. Like, we can't say that it doesn't play a factor because honestly, at the end of the day, it does play a factor. With the return of LaMelo Ball and Paulo Banchero still being sidelined with that ankle, despite going through full practice on Saturday. You know, we all had high hopes, but you know, it didn't come to be. And then something I noticed that I want to talk about as well is what I'm seeing from the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm not saying bad hockey, so don't get me wrong on that. But what I am seeing is like not true Tampa Bay Lightning hockey. We're seeing them kind of fly under the radar, and you know, I'll dissect some of those numbers there and kind of look into it. But it's weird. It's a weird dynamic to me, and I honestly. I am wondering if it is by design that they are kind of flying under the radar, because it's not something that we typically see from this Tampa Bay Lightning team, but we are seeing it right now, and it's a like I said, it's a strange dynamic. I'll run through the numbers here and we'll talk about it and see if there's no case of being worried, but it's just, you know, it's a question that I have. That's all it is. It's a question that I have. Before we do that, before we jump into our all of our segments, before we jump into the Buccaneers, because this is probably going to be a heavy Buccaneers show. I want to talk about the game last night. Not the Magic Hornets. I want to talk about the Monday Night Football game. I want to talk about the last play. And look, I'm a huge advocate. I'm a huge advocate for you do not let the game be close enough to where referees and or human error can affect the outcome of a game. I'm a huge advocate for that. What I'm not a huge advocate for is when it actually happens. Right? If Taylor Heineke's hiking the ball and he almost looks like he's running a bootleg and then decides to drop down to a knee, that is different because you now have defenders in pursuit. You don't have defenders trying to beat the offensive line. You have defenders in pursuit. And when you do that and you take a knee and then a guy gets flagged who is clearly trying to pull up. There's not a linebacker in NFL history that's trying to make tackles from his knees. He's trying to pull up. And then you're going to flag that. That would have been, look, Washington was still probably going to win that game, but for the game to end that way is just ridiculous, right? These 15-yard penalties, I know, I think Gene Steratore has talked about this before, and so has Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira for that matter. These 15-yard penalties, the personal fouls, the face masks, all of these things, they need to be reviewed. They really do. They need to be reviewed outside of the coach's challenge because they're affecting games significantly. Dallas Goedert with the fumble on the face mask was being pulled, and it wasn't just like a swipe. It was a full grasp, twisting his head, and he fumbles the ball. That's not reviewable. But what is reviewable, this is where it's so stupid. Because you now have referees watching that clip that include that missed call. That include that face mask, because that's part of that same exact play. That is arguably what caused that fumble, was the grasping of Dallas Goedert's face mask. So you have an official review at this point, watching that play with that call, that the obvious face mask that you missed, and you can't do anything about it because that's in the rules. That needs to be fixed. That needs to be addressed in the offseason when they have the competition committees get together down here in Florida. Like, that needs to happen. We need to fix that because that is absolutely stupid. And there's no other way to put it. It's ridiculous. Look, missed calls are going to happen, but it's ridiculous that you have to go to an official review to see if the player who recovered the fumble from the face mask was down. And you're watching this, like, what's going through the referee's head when he's watching this? Oh, yeah, we missed that one, because that's very pivotal. That's a huge missed call because that's a turnover for Philadelphia. That could have changed the game. The 15-yard penalty at the end of the game, probably not going to change it, but that fumble 100% can change the outcome of that game, because Philadelphia can continue rolling down the field. They could score a touchdown. They could get a field goal. They could turn the ball over, right? That's always a possibility, but it shouldn't have been on that play. You know, that 42-yard bomb Jalen Hurts threw and the receiver fumbled it after he got up, was untouched, fumbled it from behind. Those plays happen. But the Dallas Goedert, that to me is ridiculous. If that happened to the Buccaneers, I would be beyond livid right now. I would be having to hit that censor button like it's nobody's business right now. If that happens. Bad calls happen, but that to me was highlighted even more because they reviewed the bad call. Right? That reminds me of Anthony Hitchens. When Anthony Hitchens and had the pass interference call against the Detroit Lions in the playoffs, when the Lions went down to Dallas in, like, I don't even remember, 2012, something like that. And Anthony Hitchens pushes over Brandon Pettigrew. Just pushes him over. And then they pick the flag up. This is when, for me, and I'm 100% on board with Philadelphia Eagles fans that are pissed off about that. I really am. I'm fully on board with that. I support you, and I'm in your corner on that, because that to me is crap. I'm not going to say that's why you lost the game. Washington played a hell of a game. Washington played lights out last night. They played fantastic. Hey, 51 plays in the first half? Some teams don't even run 51 plays in a game. And they had 51 plays in just the first half. Washington controlled every aspect of that game. Washington earned the win. But the way that it was aided by the officials, not a fan of. And that's what needs to be addressed. Before we get into the Buck segment, I'm off my soapbox about Monday Night Football right now. We'll take a pause for the cause, meet up with our sponsors, BetUS.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the tables. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
All right, we're back. Welcome to those in the chat. Jay, good morning, sir. We were just I was just ranting about the ridiculousness of reviewing the fumble last night from Dallas Goedert when his face mask was clearly grasped, and the officials having to go back and review that play to see if the runner was down by contact, and having to watch the face mask on the review and not being able to do anything about it. They've got to make that change. They have to make the change in the competition committee this offseason that if a play is reviewed and there is a penalty on it, that penalty should be upheld. That penalty should be called. If there's a 15-yard penalty, those penalties need to be reviewed. Personal fouls need to be reviewed. I mean, we saw CJ Gardner-Johnson get flagged for a 15-yard penalty last night for hitting a guy inbounds. But it's absolutely crazy. Jay in the chat says, I'd not go full on as a fact, but the Gronk thing is a thing, and he's making a decision soon. He's been staying in football shape. I'm going to let this marinate for a second. I don't care. Honestly, I don't care if Rob Gronkowski comes back or not, because Rob Gronkowski is not the reason why the Buccaneers are struggling. Right? The Bucs are now the fourth best passing team, which tells me they don't need to have Rob Gronkowski back. Cole Keith and Cade Otton and Cameron Braid have higher run blocking and pass blocking grades than Rob Gronkowski had the last two seasons. I'm fine without Rob Gronkowski. We don't need to spend the money on him. Like we don't need to spend money on Rob Gronkowski coming back. I guess maybe, it helps, you have to respect him more than you would have to respect any of the other tight ends running out into coverage. But honestly, that does nothing for me. It really doesn't, because they've figured it out. We figured it out. It's running. It's run blocking. Not even run blocking necessarily. The Buccaneers are not bad at run blocking. The Buccaneers are bad at running, not run blocking. They're bad at running the ball. Passing is fine. Tom Brady, sure, but he's got the best touchdown interception ratio in the league. He's low on touchdowns, but I mean, the silver lining is what? He's low in interceptions too. 12 touchdowns, 2 picks. I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. And Jay, you're right. If he wants to come back and he wants a small contract, sure. And this isn't me hating on Rob Gronkowski. Gronk is arguably the greatest tight end to ever play this game. If you want to make a case for another player, sure, that's totally fine. That's not a debate that I really care enough about to even get into, but I'm acknowledging that Gronk is one of the greatest tight ends, if not the greatest tight end to ever play this game. But the issue's not with him. That's what I'm looking at. If we go through the Week 10 offensive line grades, Shaq Mason was the 4th rated pass blocker of last week. And here's where your difference is, right? Shaq Mason's grades of last week. And I'm saying this because I'm saying this because I've been very harsh on the offensive line. Pretty much all season, I've been very harsh on the offensive line until I started dissecting deeper, until I started dissecting more game film even deeper to realize that it's not necessarily the offensive line that's the problem. You know, they finally put Nick Leverett in there. Luke Gedeke was way over his head. Does he have the opportunity to pan out? Of course. But he was in way over his head. Nick Leverett holding his own. 70.1 pass block, 48.2 run block grades. Now I know you're going, 48.2, not that great. It's not that great, but it's better than anything that Luke Gedeke has done all season. Shaq Mason was the 4th overall offensive lineman. Donovan Smith, 19. Tristan Wirfs, 31st. And Robert Hainsey was 100th. When you consider there's 5 offensive linemen on each team, 100th isn't even that bad of a ranking. Right? Like, that's not even that bad. That's 20 teams. For a guy starting his first year, 65.1 run block, 62.5 pass block. You know, Tom Brady is the 2nd overall passer in terms of yards. He is 2nd overall for a reason. Right? We've talked about, the problems start up front. The problems don't necessarily start up front. The problems start when Tom Brady hands the ball off. That is realistically the problem. To me, it's a weird dynamic because we've created this. And look, I'm part of it. I'm part of that issue. That we created the narrative about the Buccaneers offensive line being so bad. But if we look at the numbers, they're not as bad as we've all made it out to be. Compare the Buccaneers offensive line to the Bengals offensive line. Right? Buccaneers have a better rated and a better statistical offensive line than the Cincinnati Bengals. Then you compare Joe Mixon's numbers to Leonard Fournette's numbers. Night and day. Night and day. When you've got a running back that can't break tackles, bad things are going to happen. Rachaad White forced 5 missed tackles alone in week 10. He's got 7 on the season on 60 carries. Leonard Fournette has 12 all season on 135 carries. For those of you who don't feel like doing the math, that's 11.25 carries for every 1 broken tackle for Leonard Fournette to 8.5 carries per 1 broken tackle for Rachaad White. And he's not even supposed to be our power back. That title's supposed to go to Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette averages a league worst. I just talked about this last week. It was a league worst 2.33 yards after contact, right? Leonard Fournette now averages a league worst 2.27 yards per carry after contact. Eventually eventually you got to put up or you got to shut up. That's what it is. Right? That's realistically, that's what it is. I'll reiterate this one more time. I apologize to all of the offensive linemen outside of Luke Gedeke. You were in over your head. I'm planting my heels on the ground for that one. Lenny turned into Charles Sims over. I mean, look, Jay, for me, the best comparison that I can make for Leonard Fournette is Trent Richardson. Trent Richardson played fantastic until he got the contract he wanted. Then he went on cruise control. Leonard Fournette played great last season, great the year before, got the big contract he wanted. Now he's on cruise control. But I'm planting my heels that Luke Gedeke was in over his head and he was not ready. And to the rest of the offensive line, I'm sorry. I apologize. Because the offensive line isn't really the issue. It's not really the issue. If Leonard Fournette is averaging all of these, if Leonard Fournette is averaging, if he's got more than 12 missed tackles forced on the season, then we've got a different conversation. Because then that means that he's having to do a lot of the work himself, but he's not doing any of the work himself. He's getting hit and dropped. Leonard Fournette's biggest highlight of the season is laying, and it might have been Micah Parsons, was laying that pancake on Micah Parsons, which is arguably a blindside block. But, I mean, it was still cool to see. But that's his highlight from this season. It's not a run. It's not a pat. It's not a catch after run or a run after catch. It's none of that. Jay in the chat, you bring up a good point. Is Lenny dealing with one of those, the hush hush injuries that they don't want to talk about? Maybe. I mean, he looks okay. But like if you're not healthy, you don't need to play. Because you've got Rachaad White, who I called this back in July, that Rachaad White would take over the starting running back role for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I called this months ago. And it's looking like it's looking like it's growing some legs here. It's looking like that it's not just a total hot take. It's really looking like it's starting to come to fruition here. That Rachaad White is going to be your starting running back by the end of this regular season. I think if we want to compare the Buccaneers running back situation to any other, to a current team, right? I had the Trent Richardson comparison earlier. Obviously, Trent Richardson hasn't been around for quite some time now. But if you want to compare it to a current situation, look at the Dallas Cowboys. Look at how the Cowboys running back situation is. Yeah, you've got Zeke. You're paying all of this money to Zeke. Zeke was once a fantastic running back. Still has glimpses of being fantastic, but he's kind of broken down at this point, right? He's doing just enough to hang on to that RB1 role. But Tony Pollard is so close to him, right? Like Tony Pollard is almost like another head on his shoulders. That's how close he is into taking over that RB1 role. And I really believe that it's kind of like that here in Tampa as well. Well, yeah, of course. Zeke's hurt now too, but Zeke is, like I said, Zeke's body is just kind of broken down. I don't know if I feel like they kind of ran him into the ground, kind of what we saw happen with Todd Gurley, what we saw happen with, maybe not even with Christian McCaffrey anymore. Who the hell knows? Because Christian McCaffrey, although apparently he's in a committee now with Eli Mitchell in San Francisco, you give up all of those picks to put the guy in a committee, which is, okay, Kyle Shanahan is a great football mind. So he knows what he's doing. I'm not over there on the sidelines. So hey, what the hell? I do want to give a shout out to the Buccaneers defense, which has really turned it on over these last 2 weeks. The Bucs are tied for second in sacks now, with 32. And they're back in the top 5 with yards allowed at an even 310 yards per game. They've also moved the needle back to, they're now 14th in stopping the run, which has improved since Akeem Hicks' return. We talked about it yesterday. I talked about it a little at the top of the hour. Akeem Hicks being back is absolutely vital to this team. It's absolutely vital to this team to being able to stop the run, to getting to the quarterback. And if you didn't, I mean, we saw the Buccaneers were on pace to break some of the best defenses of all time's records, weeks 1 through 3. And then sure, early in the season starts. You track stats from the coin flip all the way until the last remaining kick of every single game of every single week. Doesn't matter what week it is, those stats still count. Weeks 1 through 3 before Akeem Hicks got hurt, this team was on pace to be one of the best defenses of all time. Akeem Hicks goes down. Defense is now, all of a sudden, it's non-existent. Akeem Hicks comes back for these last 2 weeks. Defense is back. When you've got a good secondary, Antoine Winfield is back, but you've got a good secondary, you can afford to play man. You know, if you're worried about somebody getting beat, like you can, now that Akeem Hicks is back, you have to double him or you have to double Vita. And what does that do? That opens up everything. You want to send a safety blitz? Oh, great. You've got one of the best blitzing safeties in the NFL with Antoine Winfield Jr. There you go. Problem solved. Akeem Hicks, be all end all for the Buccaneers on defense. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Really? Like to me, it's bananas. Which I do think goes hand in hand, because I see a lot of people going, "Oh my God, Jalen Darden leading the league in punt return yards." Yes. I mean, when you've got a top 5 defense, you should. If you don't have a top 5 punt returner, you probably need to address who's returning your punts at some point, because you should be top 5 in punt return yards if you're fielding the most punts. Just a thought that I had. But you should be. Jalen Darden finally started running north-south. You know, if we tracked Jalen Darden running east to west in terms of yards as well, he'd be leading by triple. He wouldn't just be leading by, I think he's leading by like 30 yards or something like that. He would triple his output if we included east to west running, just running to the sidelines. But props to him. Like, it's not me. This isn't for me to, to hate on Jalen Darden. But this is to say, like, being overly excited about leading the league in punt return yards. It's not anything special when he's leading the league in fielded punts to return. That's how it should be. Right? Like, that's, if I have the most carries in the NFL, I should be leading the league in rushing yards. If I'm not, something's wrong. If I have the most targets as a wide receiver and I'm not leading the league in at least receptions, something is wrong. If you're doing more than anybody else and you're not leading it and in that statistical category, something's wrong. Props to Jalen Darden for leading it. But I also feel like special teams in terms of like returns is it's kind of a dead issue at this point in the NFL. Like, I get player safety and wanting to keep guys safe and stop the gang tackles and things like that, but there's been 0 punt returns for touchdowns this season. Not a one. And there's only been 1 kickoff return for a touchdown. That's it. There's been 1 kickoff return for a touchdown. Like, that aspect of the game is completely dead. Like, just at this point, just get rid of the kickoff and just start the ball to 25. I don't understand. I don't understand why this is still like a part of the game if we've just completely killed it. I would like to do some numbers, and maybe I can do this real quick while on the fly here, look this up and see if I can't see how many kickoff returns did we have for touchdowns last season. because I honestly I don't know the answer to that. Kickoff returns for touchdowns last season. Oh, this is this season. So kickoff returns for touchdowns last season. We had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We had 9 kickoff returns last season out of every single NFL game that was played. We had 2 punt returns for touchdowns. Now, punt, like, I don't know how you would change the punt return, right? I think that's just coverage is getting better and not really having a punt return specialist, right? Like, yeah, you got Jalen Darden out there, right? But I know it's going to be a bad comparison, but like when you've got like a Devin Hester or a Josh Cribbs or even Cordero Patterson for the vast majority of his career, they were punt return specialists, right? Like Devin Hester they tried him at wide receiver in Chicago, terrible. Josh Cribbs at wide receiver for Cleveland, terrible. Cordero Patterson for the majority of his career at wide receiver, terrible. You know, he's just now found rejuvenation in his career as a running back because he is elusive and he is able to force missed tackles. That's why he was such a good punt returner and kick returner. But I'm just not a fan of what they've like how they've made that change. Right? Like to me it's boring. Start the ball to 25. Damn near every kickoff, unless it's an onside kick, is going through the back of the end zone anyway. To see one kickoff return for a touchdown through 10 weeks of football is stupid to me. 0 punt returns. Yeah, you know what? Like I said, last year there were only 2. So you can't really, you know, if we're gonna compare, you can't really do anything about it. There were 7 punt returns for touchdowns in 2020. You know, what did I say? We had 9 last season. The year before we had 7 kickoff returns for touchdowns. That aspect of the game is just is dead. You know, and if we're gonna tie it all back together here, I'm thrilled that Jalen Darden is leading the league in punt return yards. But like I said, he's leading the league in field punts to return. So he should be leading. He should be. That's the nature of how that works. I've done this more than anybody else, so I should be leading. And if I'm not, we need to figure this out. We need to address the problem because that's not working. And something is not right, and you're not the proper guy to be doing this. Maybe you throw Scotty Miller back there then, you know, like, but Darden, for all intents and purposes, Jalen Darden is doing a fine job. If you're going to lead the league, I mean, go right ahead. You know, the defense is stepping up. He's going to have more opportunities now because this defense has improved so vastly over these last 2 weeks. But we do need to see improvement from Jalen Darden as well. Like I said, it's only been these last couple of weeks as well where you're seeing more north-south running. Right? Like when it was announced that Jalen Darden was leading the NFL in punt return yards, most people laughed and were obviously they're fans, right? But they're going, well, so is this north-south or is this east-west? Like, because that matters, right? This is, you know, there's been a couple of times where Jalen Darden has looked great. You know, I want to see Devin Tompkins back there returning a punt. What we saw from Devin Tompkins this is going to sound crazy, but what we saw from Devin Tompkins, I think it was the first preseason game. He had a 5-yard punt return that to me showed more explosiveness and more elusiveness in a 5-yard return than anything that I've seen from Jalen Darden on any punt return this season. I want to see Devin Tompkins out there. Chris Trapasso, friend of the show, friend of mine from CBS, has Jalen Darden as the second best practice squad player in the entire NFL. And by Darden, I meant Devin Tompkins. right? Like that to me, that says something. Chris Trapasso from CBS makes a living. That's his job, is grading and ranking and watching practice squad players. That is that man's job. And Devin Tompkins, according to him, who is an absolute expert in this field, second best practice squad player in the entire league. Throw him out. What do we have to lose at that point? Right? Is Jalen Darden performing so well that it's his role without a shadow of a doubt? Like, he's not performing great. He's performing well enough to hang on to it, but I want to see Devin Tompkins out there. That's going to be, you know what? I'm going to stick to that right now. When we were in the preseason, I said I wanted to see Nick Leverett, not Luke Gedeke. We're now getting Nick Leverett, not Luke Gedeke. I'm 1 for 1 there. One of my hot takes, I got to find that hot take. One of my hot takes way back in the summer was that Rachaad White will take over the starting running back role for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by the end of the season. That's coming. I'm telling you right now, that is coming. But my latest that I want to see is I want Devin Tompkins out there returning punts, not Jalen Darden. And not because Jalen Darden is a bum, not because he's underperforming, but because I think Devin Tompkins can perform better. That was real. Devin Tompkins being drafted or being undrafted, Devin Tompkins being on this team was because of his punt return ability. Right? Like we talked about when Todd Bowles cut Tyler Johnson and kept Scotty Miller. What was the reasoning Todd Bowles gave us? Because Scotty Miller has a better special teams presence and can provide more on special teams than Tyler Johnson can to our team. You didn't bring Devin Tompkins to your team to be a wide receiver too. Right? Like Jay in the chat, I appreciate it. I don't need a hot take on Rachaad White. I was there and I remember it, and that's all that matters. You are damn right. Play the Walter White clip. You're goddamn right. But you brought Devin Tompkins to your team because of his ability to return punts and his elusiveness and his quickness. You didn't bring him to the team in hopes that he was going to evolve into a Chris Godwin. Like, how often does that happen? Somebody goes undrafted, and then all of a sudden, now you've got a Chris Godwin situation. Like, that doesn't happen all that often, guys. That's not why he was brought to the team. He was brought to the team because of his contributions that he could make to special teams. And he's not getting the opportunity. And I think coming back off of the bye week, I think we should strongly consider giving Devin Tompkins a look. Call me crazy, but I like I said, super happy for Jalen Darden. Super happy that he's coming back. But like, what exactly is Jalen Darden doing for us? You know, like, what exactly is he doing for us? He's not doing a whole lot. Jay in the chat, I like Tompkins over Scotty Miller. And in all aspects, in receiving and returning. I'll tell you what, I don't like how many drops Scotty Miller has. Scotty Miller is part of the reason why the Buccaneers are tied for the league lead in drops with the Miami Dolphins. He's a large part of that, actually. A large part. Darden caught a touchdown pass once. It's true. It's very true. And then, you know, like, I just don't know. It's such a weird, strange dynamic to have a punt returner who's leading the league in return yards that you're like, not really, not that happy about it. Something else that I just noticed In 4 of the 10 games that the Buccaneers have played, Rachaad White has led the team in rushing yards. And he's got yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, Loose Cannon was ready to blow up this team 2 weeks ago. Sign of a true fan. Look, that's the beauty, that's the gift and the curse of doing live shows all the time, is that the temperature is going to change. There are still things that I don't like. I don't like that it took 10 weeks to get the offensive line going. Right? Like there are the thoughts that I've had are still very valid. I still need Leonard Fournette gone in the offseason. Not worth his contract. Loose Cannon Leprechaun, you have to go back after the show, watch the replay of the beginning of the beginning segment here. But I need Leonard Fournette gone. He's doing nothing for me. I don't need Trent Richardson on my team. I don't need a running back who's going to perform and play well until he gets his big contract and then decide to hit cruise control. I don't like running the Wildcat twice. I don't like running the Wildcat with Tom Brady, period. I mean, look, the only good thing that we got out of the Wildcat is a funny highlight, right? Like that to me is the only good thing about running the Wildcat, is seeing Tom Brady get absolutely rocked, then get the tripping penalty. Like that to me was just, it was comical the entire way around. But I'm not, look, the hot takes that I've given, sure, they're hot takes for a reason, because not everybody's going to agree with them. But the problems with the Buccaneers, the defense is tightened up. The defense has been terrible before the last 2 weeks. Between weeks 4 and weeks 8, the defense was really bad. Akeem Hicks comes back. Now all is well. Who would have thought that Akeem Hicks was the Wizard of Oz? Nobody would have thought that Akeem Hicks was literally the be all end all for this Buccaneers defense, but he is, and we've seen it. We've watched it play out since he went down and he came back. The defense is now night and day different. The defense looks as good as it did, right? Like it's to me, it's crazy. You know, props to Devin White. Devin White was very lackluster in his play. He got called out. He got upset about it. You know, unfortunately, you know, his father passed away, a couple days before the game on Sunday. And it's like, he took the ball and he ran with it. He played all of those emotions, the positive emotions, the negative emotions, and he channeled them and he harnessed them, and he had a fantastic game. I've said this a million times over. The problem with Devin White is that he set the bar too high for himself his rookie year. That's the problem. That's the problem for Devin White, is he set those expectations so high that it's going to be damn near impossible to live up to that again. And that's going to remain. That's why he's going to remain being a polarizing player for the remainder of his time. That to me, that's why Devin White is going to be in this. He's going to be in this awkward predicament for the remainder of his career, at least with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because of what he's done previously, setting that bar so high. And it is what it is. He's going to have to deal with it, and us as fans are going to have to deal with it as well, because that's the name of the game. That's how this works. What have you done for me lately? That's how this works. But what have you done with me lately with an asterisk? Because what have you done with me lately based on what you've done for me before? That's the life of a professional athlete when you're under public scrutiny all the time, when you're in the public eye, right? I didn't grow up until I was 31 or so. I'm 36. I'm still not grown up. I mean, you see my background. Wait till you guys start follow me on Facebook when I start streaming my retro video games and you see me go full on geek here. I'm a 36-year-old child, ladies and gentlemen. I'm proud to say it. What I'm not proud of is the Orlando Magic last night. I'm not proud. Like, it was such a bad game for the Magic. It really was. And I knew it was going to be, it was going to be one of those situations where you've got LaMelo Ball coming back and you have Paolo Banchero out. And I would be totally lying if I told you that I didn't think that Banchero was going to play coming into the game. Up until obviously it was announced that he was going to miss the game. But he was a full participant at practice on Saturday. Typically, if you see somebody in any sport coming off an ankle that's a full participant, that's usually a good sign. That usually says, hey, these guys are they're playing. He didn't play. Magic typically outscore their opponents. The Magic typically outscore their opponents in the paint. They got obliterated 64-40 in the paint last night. Obliterated. They won the Battle of the Boards 48-37. They had no steals. They only had 3 steals all game. Hornets had 15. And then again, they lost the turnover battle. 22-13. They shot poorly from the floor, 40%. They launched 36 threes. They connected on nearly 39% of them. I'm okay with that. But here's the thing. If the Hornets don't shoot 7 of 35 from 3, this game is not even a 7-point game at that point. Right? Like if the Hornets shoot 40%, if they double their output, this game is a blowout in favor for the Charlotte Hornets, who, remember, we're coming into this game on an 8-game losing streak. Jamal Mosley talked about it after the game. I feel like I talk about it every morning. Maybe I'm channeling my inner Jamal Mosley, but you can't continue to have these empty possessions and hope for the best. Right? Jalen Suggs going 1 for 10 from the floor. Obviously, that's not going to help. Right? You can't go 1 for 10 from the floor and have your starter with 2 points. You just can't. They had decent bench contribution. I mean, everybody on the Magic's bench was plus. What, 10 for RJ Hampton, 14 for Mo Bamba. But everybody on the bench was plus. They won that battle. We talk about this a lot. Like, the Magic need bench contributions. Well, last night the Magic needed starters contributions, but it was just simply getting outplayed is really what it was. Kelly Oubre got it done, plus 17. Terry Rozier was plus 17. The only person out of all of the start, well, I guess PJ Washington and LaMelo Ball were both minus. But LaMelo Ball came back 6 of 19. Not a great shooting night. Jacked up 15 threes. 4 of 15. That's largely part of the reason why they were so bad. Caleb Houston, supposed to be our 3-point specialist, was 2 of 5. But again, it's the turnovers, guys. You can't have 10 more turnovers. You can't have 10 more turnovers and expect to win a game, especially when your superstar is out, especially when Paolo Banchero was not playing the game. Bull continues to impress me. Dell, another 20-point outing. Franz, another 20-point outing. I'm impressed with what I'm seeing from Bull. Bamba is double-double off of the bench, 14 and 11. I'll take that any day of the week. But you got to clean up the turnovers. You have to protect the ball. Sure, the teams aren't going to score on every turnover, but if you've given the opportunity to basically give up 20 points when you have 10 more turnovers. At minimum 20 points. Right? At minimum. So the fact that Charlotte shot so terribly from 3 and had 10 more turnovers and didn't convert all of those turnovers into points, the Magic are very lucky that this was not a blowout in favor of the Charlotte Hornets. Hornets only had 13 points off of turnovers. 13 points off of 22 turnovers. Not a good day. They didn't convert very many of those at all. 18 fast break points. Usually, obviously, those kind of go hand in hand. But then another thing to note is the Magic literally never led in this game. Not once. Charlotte came out quick, never let up. They had a 19-point lead at one point. Obviously, we know the Magic can battle back. We've seen that on several occasions. The Magic battle down double digits. They battle back, take over the lead. Unfortunately, they kind of drop. They're 4-10 on the season now, and most of those losses are single digit losses, which was the problem for this team last year. I know I say it a lot that eventually we're going to see this team learn how to win. But I want to see this team start showing us that they're learning how to win. Right? We can, as weird as this sounds, we can only beat playoff teams. We can only beat the Warriors and the Suns. I mean, they obviously they beat the Hornets once this year, but we're only beating playoff teams. It's almost like the Magic are playing down to their opponent, which that to me, and we've talked about this on the Buccaneers side of this of the morning show several times. If you're playing down to your opponent, that is coaching. Now, I'm a huge advocate for Jamal Mosley. I think Jamal Mosley is a fundamentally sound head coach. I think he does all the right things. He says all the right things, and he's a good leader for the young men that are on this team. But if we continue to struggle against other teams that are rebuilding, that are not powerhouse teams, that's going to make me that's going to start raising some questions for me. Why do we continue to struggle against bad teams? Because the Hornets are not a good team. They're 4-11. Look, LaMelo Ball has been out, sure. Paulo Banchero went out. They won we went on a 2-game streak. 2-0 in games that Paulo was out until last night. Now they're 2-1. But if they continue to play bad, then you have to ask yourself, okay, what is Jamal Mosley doing, or not doing for that matter? Because you can't continue to play down to your opponents. I think this is a very young and very talented Orlando Magic team. If I compare the Orlando Magic on paper to teams that are in the same age range, I've got no problem dying on the hill saying that the Orlando Magic are probably one of those top 3 teams that have an average age of under 25, 26 years old. I have no problem going to bat for this team in that respect. And the Charlotte Hornets are a team that falls into that category. And you shouldn't lose to a team like the Charlotte Hornets. Mason Plumlee shooting 8 of 9 from the floor doesn't help, right? Missing one shot, that doesn't help. Jalen Suggs, and look, like I said, Jalen Suggs was 1 of 10. That's huge. That's a huge gaffe. That's a huge blemish when you're looking at the box score. But we see this happen from one of our guys almost every night, where somebody's just completely cold. My problem is, you should know if you're cold after six misses or so. Right? Like Jalen Suggs, as much as I love Jalen Suggs, you're not an Allen Iverson kind of guy. You're not a Michael Jordan. You're not a Tracy McGrady even, right? Where you're like, okay, eventually I'm just going to start knocking them down and then I can take over the game. Jalen Suggs is not a takeover guy. He's not taking over any games. right? We think Paulo Banchero hasn't necessarily taken over the games, but he's shown us more in a little amount of time to where I'm more comfortable saying if anybody on this squad is going to take over a game, it's going to be Paulo Banchero and not Jalen Suggs. So shooting 1 of 10 from the floor, not a fan of. In the least bit. Not a fan of. I've got 5 minutes left. I want a glimpse on this real quick. The Tampa Bay Lightning are not top 5 in any metric this season. They're only top 10 in one metric this season. That's penalty kill at 83.1%, and they're number 9. I find it weird, and I'm wondering if it's by design. I'm wondering if it's, hey, let's, we know that we're a solid team. We know that we can win in the playoffs, but let's just kind of coast our way to get there. Or if the team is actually struggling to produce at the high level that we've grown accustomed to. I think that to me, it's a little concerning if when you look at it as a team that's a powerhouse like the Lightning are, for them to only be in the top 10 of one category. That's kind of a red flag to me. I would guess, I would say it's more of a magenta flag. Because I don't know if it's something that I should be alarmed about or not. Something that I've noticed, right? Vazzy stopping 89.8% of his shots. Not a huge fan. But it also could be because this is the way that this is the design for the Lightning this season. We know that they've got all of these miles. We know that they've played more hockey than literally any other team in the NHL. Over these last, 3 years now? I guess they're in their 4th year of playing more hockey than anyone. So you know that it does take a toll, and it will take a toll on this team. And maybe that's also part of the reason that we're seeing what we're seeing out of this team. Right? Maybe that's part of the reason why. Now I know we've got Cooch is tied for 6th place, I think, in total points with 23. You subtract McDavid and Draisaitl, and then we got a 2-point difference between Pasternak of Boston, who's on an absolute tear. That entire team is on an absolute tear. But I'm not sure. We've got certain guys that are stepping up, but as a unit, that's where I'm looking at it going, I've got a legitimate question. Is it by design? Should I be worried? I know there's not going to be an answer to that because if it is by design, they're not going to tell anybody it's by design, right? They're going to let everybody think that, okay, maybe the Lightning are falling apart. Maybe the dynasty is over. Maybe the lengthy run of being a contender is over. So we're not ever going to actually know that, right? But I don't like looking at it. That's what it boils down to for me. I don't like looking at it. Lightning got the Stars tonight. Hopefully the Lightning can get it back done. They got the revenge win over the Caps. A really bad 5-1 loss. They win 6-3 on Sunday. Hopefully they can come back, get another win, and then continue plunging forward and just improve something, man. Give me 2 metrics in the top 10, please. I'm begging you. That's all I want. 2 stats that are in the top 10 for this team, not just one. You got to remember, we were the top penalty or top power play unit in the entire Eastern Conference. Not the case anymore. Not the case. But I digress. We're going to do it all over again tomorrow. NFL Power Rankings coming out tomorrow. Make sure you guys tune in. Follow us on all the social media platforms. Search for the Channelside Sports Network. Thank you for those who tuned in. Just got a little alert. Happy 30th birthday to my buddy Robbie. We're going to do it all over again tomorrow.